A little over a week ago, I posted a video talking about the best draft position in fantasy football here in 2025. And in that video, I had kind of settled on the 105 and 106 being my personal favorite picks. Since that video, within the last week or so, I've kind of pivoted away from that. And so I wanted to let you guys know what my new preference is and kind of the reasons for why I changed my mind and no longer really like that like 105, 106 area in fantasy drafts. So my original philosophy, why I liked, the fifth and sixth overall pick, is that I felt pretty confident you could get one of Jahmyr Gibbs or CeeDee Lamb at the 105, 106. Those are my 103 and 104. So I felt like you were getting like a minor value on both of those picks. And then in the second round, you had an outside chance of getting like a falling Achan or a falling BTJ. It certainly wasn't guaranteed, but like it was at least in the cards where one of those dudes could fall and you could get a really nice value there. But then you're still in the mix for like a Brock Bowers, an AJ Brown, Jonathan Taylor, players like that. And you feel good about your round two pick. But round three was really where I thought you could get that edge, where you had the possibility of getting like a falling Chase Brown, a T. Higgins, a Tyreek Hill going in that mid-round three area. You also had guys like Breece Hall, Amarian Hampton, who I thought were pretty interesting picks in that range. But within the last week, I've seen with like those 105, 106 spots, you see Justin Jefferson kind of going behind Jahmyr Gibbs and CeeDee Lamb a little bit more consistently. And I don't even think Jefferson's like a terrible pick at the 105 or the 106, but I don't love it. And I do prefer like a Gibbs or CeeDee Lamb pick at that spot. So that didn't feel great. I think it got less and less likely that you would see like an Achan or a BTJ slipping. But then like the most important part and like the biggest shift has been the middle of the third round has completely dried up. And it does feel like the grossest part of like the early rounds in this specific season. So Amarian Hampton took a hit with the Slater injury. And then Breece Hall, I've just started to move him down with, Braylon Allen working in, now Isaiah Davis working in on third downs on a not so great offense, with limited passing attack, limited touchdown upside. I'm just not interested in spending like mid-round three capital on a running back that could be in some sort of a committee. And then also some of the other guys that were potentially fallers in that range. Chase Brown just seems very unlikely to fall there now. T. Higgins could be there, but not super reliably. And then like Tyreek Hill is sometimes in that range, but now he's banged up. And like the whole issue is he was banged up heading into last year, didn't really pan out. So I no longer view Tyreek Hill as this like amazing smash pick. And so in my personal rankings, which you guys can get for free, they're in the description. You can just download the Google Sheet if you guys want to take a look at them. In my personal rankings, I feel like there's a wall after like the top 25 picks. Then after the top 25, I have like Lamar, Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, early round three. And those picks don't feel terrible, but they also don't feel amazing. But then after those guys, like, am I really picking mid-round three George Kittle, mid-round three Amarian Hampton, mid-round three Kenneth Walker? Like, I guess if push came to shove, I would, but it certainly doesn't feel like a great spot to be picking, which is, a spot that I originally liked picking, like the 305, 306 spots. And so actually at this point, I prefer like the early round one area, picks 1 through 4. I also prefer picks 9 through 12 over that mid round one spot, like the 105 through the 108. I feel like if you're picking late round one, you can go running back with like combinations of CMC, Achan, Genty, Henry. You can go wide receiver. Guys like Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas Jr. You can obviously go, running back, wide receiver with, any sort of combination of those guys. And so there's a lot of fun picks out there, a lot of fun starts you can have at the 1-2 turn. And then when you get to the 3-4 turn, you're still kind of picking from that same congested tier, but you're not reaching in that same tier like you would be if you were picking in the middle of the third, where you could still have a George Kittle going in that range. There could be some running backs you're interested if you like Breece in that range, or you like Hampton, you like some of the wide receivers. You're at least not having to like pay top dollar for, a larger tier. But my new favorite spot, and the spot I do kind of want to lock in here, is within the first 4 picks, and specifically now the 101 or the 102. I'm very in on these early round 1 picks. And it really just comes down to the 2-3 turn and feeling very confident with the players I can get there. Obviously, having a top 2 pick means you're going to get a Jamar Chase or like a Bijan Robinson, a Jahmyr Gibbs. For me, my rankings are Jamar Chase 101, Bijan 102. So those would be my two top dogs, but I can certainly see a case for Jahmyr Gibbs as the 102. I could also see a case for, honestly, Saquon and CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, it's your personal preference if you have that early round 1 pick, but it is just the great options going at the turn where you could be choosing between guys like Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, potentially Jonathan Taylor, Ladd McConkey, Trey McBride, T. Higgins. So I think there are fun options at both running back, wide receiver, and then you also have the option for an elite tight end in Trey McBride, which I think is really interesting because this year haven't loved really any of the values at the mid-round tight end spot. And then I think there's also some interesting picks you can make at the 4-5 turn. So this has definitely become the spot I'm most interested in. And so I wanted to dive into a couple of mock drafts and kind of just show you guys the teams you can't put together. If you have any agency in where you're picking, if you can trade your draft pick, I would be looking to move into one of these two spots. But let's start off with the mock draft from the 101. This is PPR scoring. The starting lineup is 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and then 2 flex spots. And so like I talked about, I think I said PPR, 101, my guy is Jamar Chase. So we're snagging him here, going best player available early on. At the 2-3 turn, once again, going best player available, we get Chase Brown and Trey McBride. So I feel very good. We have a stud wide receiver. We have a stud running back. I know it's the Bengals, same team. Personally, I don't really care. It's an offense I want to bet on. And then we have a stud tight end in Trey McBride, someone who could be in contention to be the tight end 1 overall, but also just has like a very, very high ceiling for the position. Then we're getting into the 4-5 turn, and maybe according to consensus ADP, these are reaches, especially for TreVeyon Henderson. But I think going Xavier Worthy, TreVeyon Henderson is a really fun 4-5 turn. And one thing I will point out is that if you are picking like this 101, 102 spot, and you exit the first 3 rounds with only 1 running back or potentially 0 running backs, you might kind of want to force a running back pick at the 4-5 turn. Now, I'm not saying to go out and make like an egregious reach and draft like a DeAndre Swift here. Like, don't do that. But like Henderson wasn't necessarily my best player available. Like this could have been George Pickens, Tet McMillan, who I think I have both those guys ranked higher. I think it definitely Tet I have ranked higher, but I kind of realized like didn't know if I would really like any of the values at running back at the 6-7 turn. This is still ahead of my personal rankings for drafting TreVeyon Henderson, so that was a choice I made there. Then we get to the 6-7 turn, and we actually do get a solid running back here. We're going with the Titans duo, I guess, with Calvin Ridley at the 6-12, and then Tony Pollard at the 7-01. Then we go wide receiver, the next 3 rounds, Emeka Egbuka, Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney, my favorite late-round quarterback, Justin Fields, and then 3 straight running backs with Trey Benson, Isaac Guerrero, and then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Obviously, the later we get in drafts, the less kind of, tied to the original starting pick we get. So just kind of recapping this team here. First pick, Jamar Chase, feel great about that. Like I said, I love the 2-3 turn. Getting Chase Brown, who I think has high-end RB1 upside. Trey McBride, who's just a set-it-and-forget-it option at the tight end position. But we get a solid running back, too, with TreVeyon Henderson. We get our RB3 with Tony Pollard, who I think is a really strong early season play, where maybe you don't feel great about Henderson week 1, but you certainly feel confident with Tony Pollard, especially with Tajay Spears banged up. Like our wide receiver room, you have Xavier Worthy, high upside wide receiver 2. Calvin Ridley, more of like that steady option, could be productive or even have a better season with a rookie quarterback. Have some young wide receivers with Emeka Egbuka, Josh Downs, and then more of that veteran kind of safer, higher floor option in a Darnell Mooney. And then just closing it out with depth running backs. Trey Benson, more of a handcuff. Guerrero, also a handcuff. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, getting great reports out of camp, could potentially emerge within this Commanders backfield. But for the picks that are kind of projectable, first probably 4 or 5 rounds-ish, I feel like this is a really strong core to start our team off with. Then looking at the mock draft from the 102, once again going best player available, we go Bijan Robinson at the 102, and then my guy Bucky Irving here at the 211. I'd be cool with Chase Brown, would have been fine with Trey McBride, Jonathan Taylor, but Bucky Irving's the guy that's there, so we go double hero RB. Don't feel as stressed about kind of forcing a running back pick at the 4-5 turn. We go T. Higgins 302. I think that's a really nice value. You're getting the wide receiver 5 in points per game from last year in round 3, very fair price tag. Then 4-5 turn, get a couple of wide receivers I'm higher on than consensus with Tet McMillan and George Pickens. When you're picking at the turn, it is kind of true that you're not going to be able to fully capitalize on falling value. We're like on sleeper, Tet, Pickens, typically going round 5, maybe even slipping to like 5-6 turn area. But obviously, when we're picking right in this one spot, we kind of just have to go get our guys, our best players available, because they're not going to fall back to us. But I don't feel too bad about spending those picks on those wideouts. Then we get a late round 6 Aaron Jones. In previous years, hadn't been super comfortable kind of getting these mid-round running backs. This year, I think there are some really interesting prices. I think this is a good spot for Aaron Jones. Liked the Tony Pollard pick in the last mock. Then we go Roma Dunze, 702, kind of fun upside play at wide receiver. We go Ricky Pearsall at the late round 8 spot. This could have been a spot where I punted tight end, but 9th round, we didn't have a quarterback or a tight end yet. Didn't want to fully punt both those positions. So we get David Njoku, super talented player. It's just like, how much is this situation going to hold him back? But if we're getting week 1 Flacco, I mean, he had that crazy stretch a couple of years ago with Flacco. At least there's going to be like overall passing volume, and Flacco's going to go out there and rip it to his weapons. So I think Njoku can at least, have his head above water. And then we go with Caleb Williams here. I actually go with a Bears stack at the 10-11 turn. Caleb Williams at quarterback. This also could have been a Dak Prescott pick with George Pickens. I believe I have those quarterbacks back-to-back in my rankings. And then Luther Burden, definitely one of my favorite later round wide receiver picks. Some people might not love having both the Dunze and Burden. I don't really think they're kind of taking from their own work, where it's like, if a Dunze pans out, Luther Burden can still pan out and be more of that slot option. Whereas DJ Moore, Luther Burden, definitely more overlapping skill sets where maybe you don't want to pair those two together. And then I usually do, closing out this draft with 3 straight running backs, Bashal Tutin, fun rookie, late season upside play, Will Shipley, great handcuff, Roshan Johnson. I guess we're all in on this Bears offense, but kind of ambiguous backfield, someone who could potentially emerge, or you just cut them and get a better handcuff option. So recapping this team, really strong double hero RB start. Feel great about our starting running backs with Bijan and Bucky Irving. Wide receiver, obviously we waited until round 3, but I think we have some really nice depth. I trust T. Higgins. I'm very in on Tet McMillan. I like George Pickens. Got some of these younger guys, Roma Dunze, Ricky Pearsall, Luther Burden. Hoping, at least one of those dudes kind of pops. And then even though we waited at quarterback and tight end, I like David Njoku as a solid later round option. Also could have talked me into Colston Loveland here, but then it might have been overkill on the Bears offense. And then Caleb Williams, some people might not like him. I actually did consider with the last pick, instead of going Roshan, I considered throwing a dart on an Anthony Richardson, just as another high upside quarterback play, but he went undrafted, so if you wanted to do that, it still could be in play here. I like this team, like I've been talking about. I do like the starts you can have with the 101, the 102, going Bijan, Bucky, T. Higgins, Tet McMillan, George Pickens. That is really fun in my opinion. So let me know your thoughts. Do you kind of understand my philosophy change? Do you agree with me that these early round picks are super fun? If you disagree, would also like to hear where you guys like picking this year. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.